Hello and welcome to Bonus Bookworms. It's the show where I read a book and then talk about that book. I'm your host, Alex.
And I'm Joe. And I kind of like this. There's zero prep for me. I don't even have to do the editing. This is your editing. So, I mean, pretty much all the bonus episodes I have edited except for the one book you picked before this. So, I'm kind of excited.
What was that one book I picked before this?
We're not going to talk about that book.
No, let's talk about it. Let's
talk about this new
one.
book that you won't tell me anything about until you hit record.
Oh, yeah. So the premise for this episode is I read the book and then tell Joe about the book.
It's kind of like when Becky reads a book and then tells me about the book. So it's very low-key for me, which I said I enjoy.
Does she edit those episodes for you too?
No, I get stuck with those ones. As I said, I've done pretty much all the bonus episode editing, Alex.
Yeah.
I am worked to death here. My fingers are to the bone. To the bone.
To the bone. But yeah.
It's not like we're making any money to go to the doctor for this, so.
Yeah. If you want to send us money, I guess email us your credit card information and security code questions, and we'll go from there.
So, now that we're through all that, Alex, what's the book you picked?
Well, I thought this might be a special occasion because, it's like I could choose just any book, but that's not really exciting for our listener, right? I had to find a book that is considered something special, something that might have a cult following or be really just interesting to read. It's got to have a compelling subject, be told in a unique way. And
is this an animal alphabet for little kids, Alex?
Yeah, my book today is Hop on Pop. No, I toyed with a couple ideas. I thought about doing another one of those fantasy smut books like we did with Stuffed. I
found Alex a gem of one, but he says it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, we might have to save it for a future episode. But I might make you read that one so we can just talk about it. So that depends on your willingness. I thought about delving into one of my interests, which is picture books. But I thought to myself, it's hard to describe a visual medium over the radio waves, even though we have a YouTube channel that does not have.
Do you have
imagery.
The cameras, Alex? That is the question. If you have the cameras, we can do video. I don't know how to edit all that with the audio, but
Yeah, I've done a little bit of video editing. I bet we could figure something out.
Okay, good. You can do all that editing then in the future.
So I want to find a more adult-oriented book that has a unique quality to it, very interesting to read. I'd heard about this book a while ago, and it caught my eye, and I'd actually, a couple of weeks later, I found it, and I bought it, and then I looked at the size of it. I'm like, holy crap, this is a massive book. I don't know if I'm going to read it anytime soon. So it sat on my shelf forever and ever, just waiting for the right time to pounce. And finally this opportunity arose.
Finally, I told him he needed to pick another damn bonus episode book and do the reading so I could take a break.
Yeah, so I picked this book up, and I thought, I might need some time to get through this. And I started reading it, and I found it myself unable to put it down. It was so fascinating, so uniquely written. I've never read anything quite like this book.
And Megan put super glue on the binding, so he literally couldn't put it down.
Yeah, my hands they're still holding it. I got a small child holding the microphone for me. Yeah, so I guess without further ado, this book came out in the year 2000. So it's been around for a minute. Oh, not a minute, 24 years. So you can break that down to how many minutes that is. It is called House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski.
It sounds familiar, but I don't think I've ever had anything to do with it. So totally new for me, Alex.
Okay. Oh, thank God. All right. So this book, like I said, came out in 2000. It is technically a horror story.
Is this the book that's supposed to make you go insane if you read it?
Yes.
I have seen it, and I remember a girl in high school who was reading it. And there's a bunch of blank pages or with one line on it.
Yeah, we're gonna get into all that.
Okay,
So I'm glad you have heard of this.
I have.
Your eye, Joe's eye just went like, oh wait, I know this one. Oh my god, this just popped out of his head. So he's like
Alex
super
was really
excited.
hoping I had no clue what this book was. So.
No, I'm actually kind of relieved you know a little bit about it, because then I'd be sitting here trying to explain the lore to you, and you'd just be like, cool, yeah, sounds wild. All right.
I can do that if you'd like, Alex.
Oh, I know you can. You do it so well. It's one of your finer qualities. I'm going to hand you my copy of the book. I just want you to look at the cover. Tell me what it might look like to you. Describe it to the people.
The cover is black with a black design on it. It looks like a seashell with a swirl and a bunch of random lines that kind of look like a maze around it. The title, House of Leaves. House is in blue. Of leaves is white. It looks like a golden compass in the middle over the center of the shell. Mark Danielewski name is in white. And yeah, pretty basic cover, Alex.
All right, I'm glad you got the word maze in there, because that's actually a very important cover. It's a depiction of a labyrinth, which plays heavily into this story. You're familiar with some Greek mythology, correct?
Especially since we did cover the labyrinth retelling story, Alex.
Yes, we read Bull. That was a test. See if you remembered Bull by David Eliot. Of course, everyone else was like screaming it into their Spotify accounts.
Of course,
you know,
Alex
Bull.
forgot that we did that, which is why he's asking stupid questions.
I'm also glad you noticed that house is blue, because this is a weird little quirk they do in the book. Every time the word house is written in the story, it's written in blue text, while everything else is normal black and white. So they do that. It's funny, they do that throughout the entire book. Even on like the critic reviews, they do it on the dust jacket descriptions. The copyright information does it, so it's really cool.
A modern marvel of 2000, I imagine.
Yes, a modern marvel. Actually, this is a funny story. I was doing some research on like how this book got written and everything, because it is a truly unique kind of book. It's honestly like before I read it, like I've had this book for months in my house, and I just like randomly would just like open it up and flip through it because I wanted to take a look at the cool stuff. Actually, why don't you do that right now? Just flip through and tell me some things you might notice just in a quick little flip through.
Early on, it's just text, lots of text, more text with a lot of what was that when they got the little numbers to give you the
footnotes.
The footnotes, yeah, got some footnotes, some really long footnotes here that takes up multiple pages. The text is very blocky, like it's a typewriter text. Ooh, we got some mostly blank pages here. Just the bottoms filled in. Ooh, some a page with 2 words and the next page with 2 words. This is kind of looking like Bull here. Yeah, some lots of empty space. Lots more empty space. But now we got columns. Everything's written in columns here. Oh, more empty space. Oh, we're back to text. The Minotaur is crossed out. So yeah, that's definitely unique looking, Alex.
Yeah, that's another feature with the Minotaur being crossed out. Any reference to the Minotaur or that story is crossed out.
We got a page here with a bunch of X's and a couple of words on it and a table. So there was a thing that said there was 2 pages missing. Ooh, we got some, what was that,
Braille.
Yeah. So we got some Braille, but of course it's flat on the page, so a blind person still can't read it.
Yeah, luckily, it's a footnote describing what it says. It says, "My eyes are up here."
Ooh, we now changed the way the pages are written. Lots of blank space. Ooh, now we're in corner to corner pages.
Yeah, that was a bitch to read, by the way. I did not think that would throw me off so much, but I just found myself reading the same line over and over again.
Yeah, so it's definitely different. Oh, we got some different ways, a bunch of blanked out words. We got some different types coming now. Ooh, there's one page here where it's kind of all over the place. It's definitely trying to throw you off on the reading.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned it was like big and blocky with lots of footnotes. It's presented as an academic text. But back to what I was saying with the way the author wrote this book, he wrote it all out longhand. So he wrote this entire thing by hand. So I think if you write it, it might turn you crazy.
So basically, did it the way that everyone used to do it before typewriters.
Yeah, actually, that's the way I write my books. Is I write it all out by hand first.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Just type it.
Yeah, but just like looking at the way the pages are designed, like that's kind of crazy that he do that. And he wrote it all and put it all into a word processor. Once that was done, he took it to the publishing house, and he would not let anybody design the book for him. He like sat in a room and he laid out all the typeface exactly as he wanted it. He didn't trust anyone else to do the work. So this was almost like an obsessive book that the author wrote, which this book has a lot to do with obsession. So it's like a fun little tie-in. So you notice there were lots of different fonts used. I think that'll be a good way to just introduce the plot of this story.
Okay, I'm all ears.
All right. So
waiting with bated breath.
Yeah, there are 4 narrators in the story. 2 of them are the most important. So the first narrator is a guy called Johnny Truant. He is a tattoo artist, or an apprentice. He's not the artist. He like fixes the needles and stuff out of and he's a drug addict, alcoholic, womanizer, really cool guy. He
sounds like you're kind of guy there, Alex, that you like to hang out with.
Oh yeah. I love my tattoo artists. But he's got a friend named Lude, Lude, who invites him to like help clear out a friend's house who's recently passed away. The only name we get for that friend's house, our friend's name is Zampano, which we never meet Zampano. We never learn anything about Zampano, except that when Johnny goes to clean out his house, he finds a trunk full of papers, all related to a video, like it's describing a video that Zampano had seen. And so Johnny...
This is kind of like The Ring.
A little bit. Johnny, a little bit, ne'er-do-well, kind of, early 20s, dead-end job. I almost got, like, I'm going to make a lot of references to books we've read together. Like, John dies at the end.
Yeah.
Like Johnny and Lude are kind of like John and David from that book. There's like picture those guys and you have a decent idea. Just like, low lives, just no real direction in life. And so, but Johnny immediately takes an interest in this trunk, and he decides to make it his life's mission to organize those papers. And so he takes them all home and he starts putting them together. He starts putting in footnotes in the story of his interpretations of what's happening in the descriptions. And almost immediately he starts noticing that he is having, all of a sudden, some major mental health issues. But we'll get into that in a little bit, because I want to introduce our second main narrator.
Oh boy.
Yes. So the main text is called the Navidson Files. So the Zampano was describing a video that was made by a guy called Will Navidson. And Will Navidson is a critically acclaimed photojournalist. He won a major award for a picture he took during a Vietnam, of a girl who's starving to death and a vulture is following her around. The video description says he's struggling with his relationship with his wife Karen, or his longtime partner Karen, and they decide to move into a house together in Virginia to help, because he's a traveling journalist. So and it's impacted their marriage, so he wants to find a place where they can both settle down and reconnect. They have 2 kids together, so it's an important life goal for them. So he's technically a second narrator, even though it's Zampano's words and compilations that are putting the story together. So those are the 2 main guys. As far as text goes, whenever it's Johnny Truant talking as the narrator, his stuff is written in Courier text, and whenever it's Navidson's or Zampano's writing, it's Times New Roman, which is interesting because Times New Roman is a very academic text, and this is presented in an academic format, whereas Courier, it's like when you have the guys who type up manifestos before going on a shooting spree. That's what they use as Courier, which really is like interesting way of showing their like Johnny's descent into madness is using Courier as a text. I don't know. It's hard to describe. I'm not a big text studier, but I kind of picked up on that.
Yeah, I watched a YouTube video on it once saying, like what kind of texts are easier to read, and basically it's just a bunch of hogwash.
Yeah.
Unless if you're doing was it the Wingding, which then it's
Comic Sans. Yeah.
No, Comic Sans is considered just good bad as New Times Roman.
Yeah. Well, my wife works in elementary school, and she said Comic Sans works really well for teaching children to read because it's shaped like the actual letters do when you handwrite it. Okay. So that's a cute little thing. But anyway, there's no Comic Sans in this, so fuck Comic Sans. The other two narrators we don't see much of. The narrator we see is the editors of the story from Random House had been worked into it, so they add their own footnotes into the story. And also we get notes from Johnny Truant's mother, which only appear in the appendix but have a huge bearing on the plot. This gets a little hopscotchy too with the appendix. You remember Hopscotch? I'm making another reference to a book we read.
Yeah, Alex, yeah. I'm well aware of the books we read. You don't have to ask me if I remember.
Okay, I'm still going to do it. Because I like the look you give me when I'm like, remember this? Remember this? Remember this? Anyway, but yeah, it's like sometimes you got to hop to the appendix to get a continuation of the story.
Alex? The looks I give you.
Yeah, exactly. So I always sit directly across from each other. Yeah, so you got to sometimes bounce back and forth. Sometimes it's really frustrating because it'll be like a little footnote that says see Appendix C, and then you'll go there and it'll be like information missing. So there's a lot of stuff to frustrate you as you do this. The stories happen simultaneously because just Johnny will jump in with his own footnotes and then just go on a complete tangent about what's happening in his life, whether it's related to the Navidson story or not. And then Navidson's got his own story going along, which is frequently interrupted by scientific study, mathematical analysis, and things like that. And you notice page-long footnotes that cut into the story. So Danielewski really wanted to just really frustrate the reader. I'm kind of glad I plowed through this book rather than taking forever and a day to read it, because if this is a book that you read 10 pages at a time, you can go sometimes that many pages without picking up on the main storyline again. But there's still a lot of fascinating stuff going on, and it's just the page layouts is what's keeping you engaged as you go along.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
This author, is this his first book, only book? Was he already a pretty well established author?
This is his debut novel.
Okay.
He's had a decent career since then. I was kind of likening it to Joseph Heller. You know Joseph Heller?
No.
Oh. So his debut novel was Catch-22.
Okay. Yeah,
and then he never really had a smash hit after that. He had a decent career, but everyone he's the Catch-22 guy. So Mark Danielewski's the House of Leaves guy.
Okay, that makes sense.
But anyway, so Navidson moved with his baby mama and his kids, move into a house in Virginia, and right away they start noticing some weird things. The main thing they notice when they bring a house inspector in, the guy's taking measurements of the house, takes a measurement of the outside of the house, and he takes a measurement of the inside of the house. Which measurement should be the bigger measurement?
The outside. So I can see where you're going, Alex. Yes. The inside shows bigger. So
yeah. So there's no chapter titles in the appendix. There's a suggested chapter titles section, and this chapter would be suggested as 1/4 inch because the inside of the house is a 1/4 inch bigger than the outside of the house. And they take tons of measurements. They're really confused by it. They're trying to figure it out, and then they come in the next day and they find out the house is about 5/8 of an inch bigger on the inside. So it's the inside is steadily growing, very TARDIS-like, where it's bigger on the inside. So they're already Navidson and Karen's relationship is already really rocky, and now they're in a very confusing situation. Navidson gets very obsessed with the idea of like, why is my house getting bigger on the inside? Particularly, there is a hallway in their house which seems to shift places, and eventually the house keeps growing and growing on the inside, and eventually he starts noticing doors are forming.
You think he'd be excited for a resale value? He's getting more square footage on the inside for, so when he bought a 1,600 square foot house, now is a 5,000 square foot house.
I know, right? 2,000, like you make a bundle. That was before the market crash, man. But he as a photojournalist, he starts taking video of what's happening, and that's what this Navidson record turns into, is because he's filming his house essentially, and that's what Zampano is describing this whole time, is what this guy has filmed. Now, their film only exists in legend at this point when Johnny Truant is organizing the story. It was supposedly a really big hit back in 1994 when it first came out, but then all of a sudden it only existed on VHS, and then there are no known copies of it anymore. So there's a lot of unreliable narrator thing going on right now, because we don't know anything about Zampano except for he was blind apparently, and Johnny Truant proves to be a highly unreliable narrator as well, because he's very often incorrect in the information that he does in his footnotes. On his long tangents, he shows a pattern of alcohol and drug abuse. He's obsessed with. He goes on for pages and pages about a stripper that he's obsessed with named Thumper, and
that is a stripper's name, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
I'd be a little worried about hiring a stripper named Thumper, but I mean, to each their own.
Yeah.
How do you know the information he's giving is incorrect?
That's where the editor's footnotes come in.
Okay.
They often correct him on what he's saying. Going back to Johnny Truant, like I said, he's showing a history of substance abuse, and he's not very good at his job, and he begins experiencing time lapses. Again, John does at the end, where he loses chunks of time. He starts collapsing at random. Everyone thinks he's using drugs, when in fact his obsession with the book is growing, and he's using less drugs as he goes along. And there's a cool little thing. This is the hopscotchy part, where the editors say, like, for more information on this subject about Johnny Truant, see Appendix C, and you get there, and it's just 50 pages of letters of from his mother to him that she written from a insane asylum, because she had a history of mental illness. That's also another thing where Johnny might not always be mentally sound, because just genetics. But she, during his childhood, had tried to strangle him, and we also learned later on she dumped a thing of boiling oil on his arm, and it was all scarred to hell. And
whole families.
Yeah, and also his father was killed. So he's had a rough home life his whole life, which might help explain some of his waywardness, his lack of guidance. But reading her letters, she's technically the fourth narrator. Yeah, we learn that she's struggled with her mental health. He's had a history of violence growing up, always picking fights and getting attacked by people. He's had to transfer schools due to violence, things like that. So he's had a rough background. That's like a 50-page thing, and it's actually kind of really heartbreaking to read. And there's also it's called the Wellstone Letters. It's a companion piece that the author wrote for this book, which is just those letters, but expanded on even more. I might read those when I get the chance. Going back to Navidson, the house grows out even more. There's like and this is pre-YouTube, but there's like a viral video called the 5.5-minute hallway, where he's just walking down the hallway with his camera, and all of a sudden he gets lost in that hallway. He tries turning around. He can't get back to the main part of his house. The hallway keeps shifting on him, and he's wandering around in his hallway for 5 minutes, going back and forth, and he can't find his living room. So it's like a scary little thing. It's where things start escalating, because eventually the growing house turns into a full-blown labyrinth. If you saw the snail swirl in the center of the cover, that's actually a staircase that goes down into the labyrinth. Davidson not wanting to venture down there alone, he gets this crack squad of adventurers who are willing to go down there with him and record everything, see what they can find. He gets a guy called Jed, a guy called Wax, and a guy called Holloway. They all venture down there, and that's where things get super crazy in the text, because like you notice there's a lot of like huge block text that's presented very academic style, where like it's just the facts, and here's footnotes to explain things or give cite sources, yada yada. But around page 130, I want you to describe what you're seeing here.
Okay, we got several different columns, blocked out text. Like it looks like some of it is mirror image. Yeah, it's kind of goofy. Some of it's upside down, on the side. It's all over the place, and different size text, different fonts. It's very confusing. The blocked out text are blue boxes. Obviously, house is written in blue a bunch of times.
Yeah, so this is them venturing down to the labyrinth. So, labyrinths are big mazes, very confusing, very easy to get lost in. That's like the whole point of them, right? So you get trapped down there. I was really just like floored by this section of the book, because he wrote this section as if it was a labyrinth of text. So there are just endless footnotes. The ones on, the right-hand side, they're written forward, and it's just a list of names. The one on the left-hand side starts at the end of this section and works its way back to the front of the section. So it goes backwards. There's regular text. There's interjections from truant. There's a shit ton of footnotes that go all over the place. The stuff in the boxes are like lists of equipment you might find in a house. And all the while there's a story being told while it's trying in its power to divert and confuse you. There's like pages of footnotes where it's like the footnotes upon footnotes, where you get to the end of the footnote and it brings you to the next footnote. There are places where the footnotes are referencing footnotes that have already happened, so you have to flip back pages. So it's about as confusing like a 100-page section of a book I've ever read in my life. And what happens in it, essentially, is those three adventurers who are down there, they all experience massive traumas.
Quick question. With all these lists, do you think Adam would enjoy this book?
Oh, dude, he'd be totally into it. Yeah. Yeah, there's like whole like breakdowns of like, for similar content, please watch these movies. And then it's just like 12 pages of movies that might have like anything tangentially related to this. It's great. But yeah, so let me see. Yeah, they're all down there. It takes them, I think, like multiple days to get down the stairs. All the while, there's this low intensity growling noise, kind of like a minotaur might make. And they start running low on food and water, getting a little more desperate. And Holloway, who is their leader, he gets really jumpy and paranoid, and he ends up shooting Wax, and like panicking because now he knows, like, oh, I can't go back. Like, they try to console him, like, it was an accident, it's an accident. And he's like, I can't go back, man. And he runs away into the darkness, and Jed runs out of food, and he's kind of alone at this point. Like, Wax is still alive, so he's like trying to care for Wax and like keep him safe. Holloway's run off and gone crazy, and eventually Davidson has to venture in himself to try and save the guys. So he goes in, and this room is shifted again, and he in order to maintain radio contact, he has his brother Tom stay at the top of the stairs, and he goes to the bottom of the stairs, and he gets down to the bottom of the stairs in a matter of hours. So everything's very topsy-turvy and shifty. And he finds Jed with Wax, and this is like a really heartbreaking scene. This is where the text starts going super fast. There's very few words on each page. He finds him, and there's like this whole thing where, like, you ever see that part of the movie where the guy thinks he's rescued and then immediately gets killed? That happens to Jed. So he sees Davison, smile goes across his face, and then Holloway shoots him. So yeah, they get chased by Holloway for a while before Holloway, like the house almost like kills Holloway by just like closing him off from them rescuing the two adventurers. Wax ends up dying. I can't remember what happens to Jed off the top of my head. I think he dies too. And Davidson comes back, and they get out of there. And at this point, his Karen just wants to like take the kids and go, like get the hell out of here.
Take the smart move, and trying to stick it out in this house is not the smart move. It's the plot of every horror movie. Do not try to save your marriage in a haunted house, people.
Yeah, Karen is very much the voice of reason, and like any good voice of reason, she is largely ignored throughout this story.
I thought you were gonna say like any good woman, Alex.
Oh golly. Saved it at the end. All right. But yeah, she wants to get out, so she's like starting to pack to go. And a lot of the paranormal activity. Speaking of paranormal activity, this is very much a found footage style storytelling that was popular in this day and age. This book did come out like right after Blair Witch, so found footage was the shit. Anyway, the house. Normally, it reserved all of its paranormal activity for the hallway and into the labyrinth, but when she starts trying to pack, the house like entirely just attacks them. And it's like discovered. It's like there's not really a minotaur monster. The monster itself is the house. So it starts shaking the floorboards. It's shifting the hallways and stuff like that. So everyone in the house has to get out of the house, and they all get out except for Navidson's two children, which Navidson and his brother Tom go in. They get the kids out, but the house manages to kill Tom by just opening up the kitchen trapdoor style, and he just like falls into nothing.
Okay.
So that was really cool. And all the while we see like Johnny, he ends up just like waking up one day from his organization of the papers, and he's like gaunt. He looks like he's been strung out on meth for years at this point, even though he's only been looking at the papers for a few weeks. He's like lost just 3 weeks of his life. He has no idea what's happened. He goes to his tattoo parlor that he works at. He's been replaced there. He like scares the people with his appearance because he's dropped so much weight, and he's described his teeth are rotting out of his head and things like that. And the only person who really talks to him is Lude at this point. And Lude's like a really bad influence on him too the whole time. He's also like his best friend and everything like that.
Is Johnny trying to find the house too, or is he just trying to organize the papers?
He's like setting goals for wanting to try and find the house, but his main thing is just organizing the papers, and it becomes his sole obsession by the end of the book until something happens. But we'll get there. Something. Yes, something. A little something happens.
You're just teasing it so well, Alex.
Yeah, and then Navison moves off. Like he agrees, like let's get out of the house. So they flee the house, and they're just trying to overcome their trauma that they faced in the labyrinth. But Navison finds he cannot let it go. He's got to do it.
He's got to go back to the house.
He's got to go back.
Go defeat the house
for his own pride. And it's like there's a description of his time as a war journalist where he feels guilt because he saw a little girl starving to death, flies picking at her skin. A vulture is standing there kind of waiting for her to pass, and he doesn't help her. He stands there and he takes a picture of her, and he becomes a world-famous photojournalist for it. So I think he's struggling with his guilt over his actions there for, using someone else's suffering for his own gain. And so he sees the house as a way where he can unlock the mystery of the house and find a claim to fame that does not come at the suffering of anyone else. So he ventures back to the house alone.
Adventurers and his brother and almost his kids.
Yeah, and like Karen is like trying to get him to not go, but they're kind of separated at this point. And like he'd vowed he wouldn't go back, but he goes back anyway against her wishes. So it's like when he goes back, it's pretty much done for them. And he goes back in there. That's when the story starts. Like it gets back into the big block text, but that's when it gets into him. Like it starts like few words per page. You'll notice you were just on a page. I saw you flipping through there. The words are X'd out and things like that. Apparently, Zampano had tried to burn out certain sections of the words. It's a really frustrating section where like large portions of it are X'd out, but you can still figure out what it's saying in context. It's just really difficult to read. But yeah, it's like trying to show like diagrams of what the rooms he's in looks like, because he rides his bike down the hallway, which is now thousands of miles long, and he has to crawl through a little crawl space at the end of it, and like it gets smaller and smaller, and on the page it does the exact same thing with the words boxes get smaller and smaller as he's crawling, and the rooms are shifting. That's why they're written diagonally, yada yada. And then he just finds himself at last in a room. He's out of food, he's out of water, and essentially the house has destroyed him, and all he can do is sit there, and he's got a box of matches and a book. And he's like, I can just get through this book as much as he can. The book's name, give it a guess. What do you think the book's name is?
House of Leaves.
Whoa, you're good. So he reads House of Leaves.
Alex, this isn't just a pretty face, you know.
Yeah. It gets a little meta towards the end with some of the weird things he does, but there's also a part where he's like humming a tune to himself, and like the page is just the sheet music of what he's humming to himself. Yeah, he's reading House of Leaves to himself, but he only has like a box of matches. Each only has a flame for 12 seconds. So he starts to, it's like this cool just imagery where he rips out the page he just finished, lights it on fire, reads the next page, and kind of works his way through the book like that. He doesn't quite make it all the way through, and eventually he's just kind of cold and hungry. The house is all of a sudden freezing, and so he's just, the last image you get of him for a little while is that he is slowly dying. And then it cuts to Johnny Truant again, and he gets an entire chapter that is just dedicated to him, where he finds out Lude has died. Lude got all stoned and drunk and drove a motorcycle, and it didn't work out well for him. So there's a whole chapter of him just kind of wandering aimlessly. It almost like breaks the book's spell over him. And there's like two sections where he's trying to get his life back together, where it seems like he describes like going to see friends and they help him recover and fix himself. And then he gets to the end of that section, he's like, just kidding, that none of that actually happened. This isn't a happy ending.
Just to piss you off.
Yeah. And then he tells a story of a child that dies during childbirth, and that's the last two chapters do not feature him in it at all. So that's the last we see of Johnny Truant.
Well then, so he probably died.
Yeah,
that's what they're kind of hinting at.
Yeah, and there's two final chapters where somehow Karen returned to the house, and I think this is why the book is sometimes considered a love story, is because she manages to find Davidson in the labyrinth and pull him out of it. And being a more literary reference is kind of like Jane Eyre.
I've heard of it. Okay. Yes.
Well, like the person she's in love with, like had made some major transgressions, and his crime, punishment, quote unquote, for his crime was he's blinded in a fire. Davidson has sort of punishments for his transgressions, where he loses his hand to frostbite and part of his ear, and he has to walk with a crutch for the rest of his life. But he starts the guy from Jane Eyre gets some of his vision back, and he gets some of his mobility back, and he's able to stay with Karen. They're able to make up at the end, and there's always going to be that trauma that they experienced, but they're going to be able to be okay. Then we have appendixes which has lots of supplemental material that's been referred to throughout. There were the letters from Johnny's mother to Johnny, and there's evidence show it. Johnny Truant was pretty sure that nothing in this book actually happened, so there's evidence suggesting that, but also the editors of from the publishing company have evidence that it did exist, including one frame from the supposed film that still exists, followed by a rather large index that you're flipping through.
What's the purpose of the index?
That is to, from what I can tell, that's to, number one, pad the page numbers, and also to give it the academic feel that it's had throughout the entire book. So, like I said, that's that's House of Leaves. As I understood it, it took me 2 weeks to read it, and I just summarized it in about
And Alex is
40
now a
minutes.
drooling mess.
Yeah, it drove me insane, especially the labyrinth scenes. I think that's what the book is most notable for, is its labyrinth scenes. But it's highly creative throughout the entire book. Like there's 130 pages. Like it's a big book, and you'll open it up, and the text is tiny, and there's 130 pages of just tiny text. It feels like you're reading a physics book almost. So it's like one of those, like, only if I'm really interested will I ever read this. But once you get through that, you get into the labyrinth section, and the text starts breaking up, and it starts going super fast paced, and you can get through massive chunks of the book at a time, and it wound up going a lot faster than I thought it would, and it's just a really good book.
So was it a literary success?
It was a bestseller. I think it's got a cult following, to say the least, from what I can tell. There's a decent audience for it. If I were to reread it and read it even closer than I did, because I was just going for story, I think if I wanted to go for more nuance and depth, there would definitely be a lot there. I think this book is definitely one you can obsess over and lose yourself in, much like the people in the story do. It's definitely got some rereadability. Like the labyrinth bits, once I figured out, there were like lists of materials to like put into a house, and a list of movies, and a list of related books, and a list of related other haunted houses.
You just skip those sections?
Yeah, I just kind of like glaze through those, be like, I'm gonna make sure I'm not missing anything. But it'd be fun to do a deep read of this and get it like a complete story. I don't know. You'd have to be absolutely crazy to write something like that. So I'm glad I did it, and I'm gonna conclude my summary of the story by saying I enjoyed this story, and now I get to do the best thing for it,
which is go back into the house.
Which is give it to you.
I thought you were going to go back into the house, Alex.
Guys,
let the house consume you. So, I guess Final Thoughts was a good book, but just kind of goofy.
Yeah, it's got to be. So I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads.
You gave this 5 stars, but The Liar you gave like 1.5.
I gave it 1. That book was awful. Anyway.
Alex, I'm pretty sure your rating system is inverted, because you also gave Stuffed 5 stars.
Stuffed is so good. I don't know what you're talking about. This book is great. Ugh, I got to read the sequel. That was great. All right. Anyway, enough about House of Leaves. Let's get back to Stuffed. No, there's a lot there. There's a lot to take in. It's definitely one you can lose yourself in. It's definitely not light reading. If you're into just casual storytelling, which is perfectly fine. I love that stuff. This is gonna be hard to follow.
So it's not a cozy mystery, is what you're saying?
Not a cozy mystery. And there's this really, really well written descriptions of graphic sex and violence that'll keep you going. Like Johnny talking all about his sexual exploits. It's number 1, really gross, and number 2, very creative. There's a really heartbreaking scene where he's like talking about his friend Lude's partners, and then he has like a breakdown of why someone would like sleep with someone like Lude, and they all have like massive amounts of emotional trauma. It's actually really sad to read.
So who did you most identify with in this book, Alex? Which character were you like, yep, that's me?
Also, before I do that, making another reference to like the labyrinth in Greek mythology. Zampano is blind. You know who else is blind?
Who, Alex?
That would be the great Greek poet Homer. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think he actually told the story of the labyrinth, though. He told the Iliad and the Odyssey. But anyway.
Minor details, Alex. Yeah. Minor details. So back to my question, though.
Who would I identify with?
Yeah.
So Navison's a world-famous photojournalist. I have a phone that takes cameras.
It takes cameras?
Yeah, it takes cameras of pictures. And
so your Lude is what you're saying?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. No, I identify as a Karen myself.
I can see you as a Karen. Maybe not this Karen.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't really identify with any of the characters per se. I think like Johnny's.
Maybe you're a Holloway just running around shooting people.
Yeah, it could be a Holloway.
I can see you doing that, Alex.
Johnny's like the he's like the substance abuse stuff and whatnot, but he and his descent into madness and chaos, which could be like they leave a lot up in the air. Like it could be from organizing the book, or it could be something that was already there and it was just unlocked at the same time as reading about the book. But,
It's kind of like, well, I can't think of the names of the movies, but I feel like I've seen that movie a few times. Where remember the one with
so like Shutter Island.
no, not Shutter Island though. That's a good example. I was thinking the one where the guy's obsessing over the 23. Is that just 23?
Yeah, the number 23.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think you might be the first person like a decade to reference that movie.
look at me being the cool one, bringing back old Jim Carrey movies.
Yeah, Jim Carrey trying his hand at horror and completely whiffing.
That was a terrible movie.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, he looks at the clock and it's 2 and 3. It's like 2:15. It's like
He always rolls over and it's like 11:12 p.m. It's like 11 plus 12 is 23. Yeah, there's and like just the fact that there's two stories being told concurrently, and he's doing his best just to make it as hard to access as possible. I mean, it's still like really well told stories once he gets there, but he's just like wild tangents all over the place.
So, how do you think he was able to convince the publishers to publish this book? I mean, especially since he was so hands-on, like it's my way or no way. I feel like this is a big risk for a publishing company to want to put it, especially with how big the book is.
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I'd done more research into his personal life. I don't know if there were connections or anything like that. Or maybe they were just looking for something that was truly unique at the time. And it had that, like I said, it had the ties into found footage storytelling, which is popular at the time. And it's, very... like I keep saying, it's unique. I've never read a book quite like that. I was describing this book to someone else, and they're like, "Don't they write kids' books like that, where they use the text to show things?" I'm like, "Shut up!" But this is not like kids' books. It's way cooler than kids' books. Yes, I think it's just the sheer scope of it. I think it must have rung true with the publishers who were looking for something a little more meaty than the usual fare. I mean,
not another interview with a vampire, basically.
Yeah. I mean, thrillers and vampire stories, they put meat on the table, but stuff like this, they'll still take risks on, and it's something that really intrigues the avid reader. I mean, it's something, like I saw a post about it on Instagram or something like that, and I was immediately like, I gotta read this book. This looks really cool.
Mark's other books, are they similar to this, or are they more traditional? Do you know?
I'm not 100%. I know the only thing else I know that he wrote was a series that did not sell well, to the point where it was supposed to be like a 9-book series, and he got 3 books in and they canceled the series on him. They were like, we're not publishing these anymore. I know he seems to write really dense, thick books like this, though, from what I can tell.
Okay. So he still has a following then.
Yeah, I would be interested in reading more of his stuff.
See if it's like, what's his face, Clockwork Orange, see if this was maybe what got popular, but he's like, this is just what I did to sell books, but I was really more proud of my other stuff, kind of thing.
Yeah, I would hope he's proud of this book. It's clearly not written out in 3 weeks for money and accidentally turned into a big hit. I think he finished it, and he writes 1998 at the end of it. I think that's probably when he finished writing it, and then spent another 2 years organizing the text. So this is a massive labor. I doubt.
I'm sure he spent a lot of time on it. I mean, just be able to write that much and have it all actually cohesive enough that you could do something like this. It's not something that you're just going to spit out.
Yeah, just it's highly experimental, and Anthony Burgess, when he did Clockwork Orange, he was a master of language at that time, so that's why he was able to come up with the NADSAT way of speaking and just hammer it out really fast. But this has also just a ton of research behind it, like into Greek mythology and just how houses are built in general. So it's, even if it's not like 100% how he wanted it to turn out, like there's no way he could write something like that and be like, it haunts me still. I bet he's just as obsessed with it as everyone who reads it will be.
Okay. Well, thank you for your book, Alex.
Yeah. Tune in next month for the follow-up episode of Joe Read the Book. We're recording this in a mental institute.
So, anything else you want to say on this, Alex? Or
I think I got everything. I told a mean story, didn't I? You're not gonna enjoy it as much because I spoiled everything for you. But
I figured as much. I'll read it, Alex. I'll probably get to this book in about 4 years. That's about my TBR right now.
All right, you will have long forgotten
That's
everything
the
that
hope.
happened by then. No, everyone's gonna be like tuning back into this episode, like clearly, like tons of times. So
Yeah. So this is our final bonus episode of season 1. The next episode we're gonna put up is just gonna be a kind of recap and setup for season 2. So stay tuned.
if you want to hear us reminiscing about the good old times of the last 16 months,
Yeah. It's been quite a ride, Alex. Quite a ride.
Yeah.
Me riding you to get stuff read on time and edited on time and recorded on time.
of of you being like, yeah, it's one book a month. How big can it be? And then like a couple months in, being like, yeah, we're doing a second bonus episode book every month.
I tricked you.
You got me. Thank you for that. Oh. Well, it got me to read House of Leaves. Which
Yeah, to be honest,
quickly
a
become a
lot of
fan
those bonus
favorite.
episodes, you didn't have to read any books for those.
That's true.
So
Yeah. Thank you, Becky, for shouldering that burden of recording with Joe.
she hates it so much.
Yeah. I think she's warmed up to it. We got.
No,
we got
I
it
think
rolling.
she hates it more. I think she liked it initially, and then she's grown to hate it because I'll tell her, Becky, I need like 3 more books read from you, and she's like,
Can't pay me for this.
I'm done. I can't think of any more books like I want to talk about anymore. Really, you've read like 100 books already. Let's go.
Yeah. My only other book I thought of doing was a book I really hated the ending of, which I put in the stack for you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So maybe I'll throw that one onto a list too for us to read, because it really pissed me off. It's The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. But anyway.
Any book named by a guy named Alex gotta be bad.
I know. Except for my book, Paul Plimpton vs. Ragnarok, available on Amazon for the low price of
You
$9.99.
still haven't got your other books done editing, Alex?
No, I'm getting there though. I'm starting in on the Destroyer.
Pretty sure you
next
said
week.
that like 3 months ago.
Now that I finished House of Leaves and I've recovered, I can finally get back to.
6 months after you got out of the mental institute, you're finally able to start going back to reading again and editing.
Yep, exactly.
Writing.
Well, not editing. This is going to take a while to get through. It'll be like day of publishing. You'll be like, where the hell is my podcast? Be like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, 5 a.m., Alex, on the 20th.
5 a.m.
That's
on
when
the
it's
20th.
due to be posted.
Yes. So tune in on the 20th of July.
So, anyways, we got an email. If you want to reach out to us, KindleBookworms@gmail.com. We're on Instagram @KindleBookworms. You can reach us there. I will do all the reaching back to you if you do reach out to us, because Alex does not do any of that extra work.
I'm a busy boy.
Yeah, he's busy picking nose hairs, I think.
Oh, I didn't think you noticed.
Anyways, we have a YouTube channel. Go check it out. Seems that we had a handful of listeners that are enjoying that. So, I said no video, but maybe we will someday. Just wait and see. We're on Facebook @Kindle Bookworms. Follow us on that. Alex has, as he said, a book out. Go buy that. It's on Amazon. Links in the description. What else we got?
I think that's it, right?
That's it. So I said, stay tuned for next month's wrap up, where we talk about our thoughts on season 1 and how it went and what we're gonna do for season 2.
And
we'd love
to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, we would. That
Maybe
would
if
be
you-
great.
Yeah.
But by the time you're hearing this, though, we've probably already recorded and edited that episode. But still, we would love to hear from you. So please,
We'll write a bunch of fake comments and read them off.
pretty much follow, rate, comment on Spotify, Apple. Tell your friends and family about us, anyone that will listen, even those that won't listen, just try to get our listenership up. We appreciate it. Your word of mouth is the best way to grow a podcast, so give us a hand and make us bigger.
Yeah, we appreciate any support you guys give us.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I got, Alex. Thanks for taking one for the team and reading a book that made you lose your mind for a while.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. It was well worth the insanity. But anyway,
Alex, honestly, I think it made you slightly more sane.
Yeah.
You're already pretty far gone as it was.
Sane or handsome? All right. Well, anyway, I'm Alex.
And I'm Joe.
And this has been Bookworms.
Out.